Hello students, welcome to BTech 360. NIT Surathkal is a college that was established in 1960 and called the Regional Engineering College Surathkal, and now it is called NITK Karnataka. It was envisioned as a center of engineering excellence for India's western coast. It has a beautiful beachside campus and a strong legacy in core engineering disciplines. Especially, it is very well known and powerful for its powerful alumni network. I want to show you data of how you can get into NIT Surathkal, what kind of ranks you need at JEE Main level, what kind of placements happen, what kind of salaries that you get, and what kind of companies come for placement is what I'm going to discuss in this particular video. Before I move any further, if you're not subscribed to BTech 360, do it right now. It is in your own interest. And most importantly, if you want to download all the placement numbers and cutoffs and everything of JEE Main for NITs, we created a beautiful comprehensive guidebook for you. Please go to the link below, download that, and you'll be able to understand everything about NITs in terms of cutoffs, placements, salaries, companies coming for places, all those details and more. You will have it in that. Right now, let's get to NIT Surathkal. As I told you, we'll talk of the placement statistics, the salary data, the recruiters, the job role-wise performance, and of course, many other things that you need to know before you get out of this. Now, talking about NIT Surathkal, it was established in 1960. It is one of the oldest regional engineering colleges, as you would know, and it was established in the western coast only. Right now, which essentially means that we're talking of an institution which is 66 years old. Now, just imagine the kind of alumni network it will have when an institution is 66 years old and so many batches have passed out of the system. Which is what, when I earlier talked of powerful alumni, that is what it means. That whenever you have a greater legacy, the alumni network is extremely powerful because their people would have moved up the ladder and been CEOs and CTOs and everything across the companies around the country. Which is what NIT Surathkal can boast of. Now, NIT Surathkal earlier was, as I said, first was Regional Engineering College Surathkal, then it became NIT Surathkal, and 2002, it became NIT Karnataka. So that's the journey, but it's just a change of name. Essentially, the ethos of the college still remains the same, which is it's an NIT, right? It's an institution of national importance, which means that it creates courses which are also in the interest of the nation, right? So many of the courses that NITs and IITs and all create, a private engineering college will not create. But these IITs and NITs are supposed to be looking at what is the need of the nation, or also creating those kind of courses, which the defense sector, the public sector, or any other governmental sector might take it. Like some of these courses are not taken by commercial people, but they still have some kind of a demand. So you actually create that, right? Now, this is spread over 296 acres of land. Total undergrad students is 3,987. Right, of which 79% are boys and 21% are girls. Right, and of course, like in all NITs, you actually have 50%, which is reserved for the state itself. So most of the NITs will have about 50-55% of the outside the state because of the extra numeracy that comes in. Otherwise, it's 50% only. So 53.7% students are from outside the state, and the 3.7% essentially is because you have the extra numeracy seats which keep coming in from outside, and which is a provision that is always given. And about 46% students come from within the state. Right, and there are about 19 students which are coming from outside the country also. And the faculty size is 316, which is very good because if you now look at it, it's a student-faculty ratio of 1:13, which means for every 13 students, you have one faculty. Typically, what is advised is 1:15. So when you deal with 1:13, it's a very good ratio to deal with. Now, we talk of placements. Whenever I talk of placements, there are 2 or 3 you must things that we'll show you. You must understand the difference between the sources of how we collect placement data, right? The placement data, first of all, there is one very specific, authentic, and possibly true placement data that happens, which is submitted to the government of India for the purpose of NIRF, which is National Institutional Ranking Framework, right? NIRF. Now, when this data is submitted, the director actually submits the data on an affidavit, which means that you're taking responsibility for the data, and assuming the data is wrong, you can be penalized also. So to that extent, of all the data that is there out there in the system, the NIRF data is more authentic. I'm not saying it's the absolute truth and those kind of things, because we've seen that even in this data, a lot of people submit wrong data, right? But having said that, of all the data that's out there in the marketing brochures and prospectus and those kind of things, the data that's submitted to the government of India on an affidavit seems to be more authentic. So we are first showing you that data. So here the source is NIRF, right? Now NIRF data, when you look at that, students who got in 2021 and passed out in 2024. So it's a year old. The thing about NIRF is typically 1 year old because they present data 1 year older because the ranking process takes about 6-8 months. But typically you must know one thing, that the placement data doesn't change dramatically year on year. Right? It maintains a certain kind of a linear progression. So that is where you will actually see some of these things being. Now, assuming there's a trend that is falling, then you can assume that a similar trend of fall will also happen in the following year also, and so on and so forth, right? Now, in this 2021, the number of students who admitted is 1063, of which 986 students graduated. Now, what is the gap between this, which is about 63 plus 14, 77 students? This can be people who dropped out, people who failed, people who have taken a drop year and then will come back later. So all those kind of things will happen. But the number of students who graduated is 986. Of this 986, the number of students who are placed is 756. Right? So that's the kind of data that you're dealing with, that number of students who placed is 756. Now, this is one thing that bothers me every year, right? Look at the students who are opting out for higher studies, 114, right? Now, typically with an ISER and those kind of cases now, I would be completely in alignment, because in ISER and all, people do get into graduation so that they get into post-graduation, they do research and those kind of things. But when you have this kind of a number at engineering, where typically people join because they want to get placed, get experience, and then move on to a higher studies if need be, which is post-graduation or something, then this bothers me. And the kind of jump that we've seen in 2 years' time, we actually have seen a jump of about 350%. Right? We've seen a jump of 350% because in 2019-22, the opting for higher studies was only 32. Now it's 114. This bothers me. It's a big red flag for me. Why do institutions do that? There are two reasons why it happens. One is the students, if they don't get a good placement, they move on for higher studies. Right? Two, when the companies that are coming in are not good and all, there have been cases where even the good national institutions have been forcing students to opt out of placement process and move for higher studies, because then they can show a higher placement percentage. How does it work? Because then they reduce the number of students who sat for placement. Like in this particular case, if you look at this 86.7%, it comes out of 986 minus 114, right? And this is out of 756. So you have 756, which is about 874, right? So you're talking about 756 on 8774, which is where the 86.74% comes in. But if you have to deal with it as 986 only, then just imagine what will happen. This placement percentage will not be 86%, but actually will fall down to about 75% or 74%. Right? So increasingly, when I see a big spike in the number of students who are moving for higher studies, I actually have my antenna up. I seriously feel that there is something wrong in the system, that a BTech student is now straight away, by hordes are moving for higher studies. That bothers me, and this seems to be the case here, because look at the growth in the number of students who are opting for higher studies. Over the last just 2 years, we're dealing with about 2.5 times more of the number of students going for higher studies, which concerns me. Because if you now look at it also in a different way, look at 2019-22 and 21-22, just 2 years apart. Here the number of students placed was 734. Here it's 756. So the number of students who got placed increased only by 22. But look at the number of students who actually were increased in terms of the number of students who were admitted. Just look at this number. I want to clean this up. Like, look at this. 881 was a number here admitted. Here it's 1063. So almost 182 students increased, right? But when you look at the number of students who were placed, 734 moving to 756, only 22 extra students were placed. And this bothers me a lot. This bothers me a lot because what they've done is they moved students for moving for higher studies, or what they showed is that the students have moved for higher studies. But a good student doesn't move for higher studies if he's actually getting a good placement. You look at the CS branches and all, you have 95% placement. If there are 100 students which are admitted, 99 students sit for placement, 95 students get placement. But when you move to the entire institution, this kind of numbers come up, which bothers me. And I suspect that NIT Surathkal is hiding more than what it can reveal here. So that is my take on as far as this data is concerned. And the other thing that you must look at is the kind of median salary. Despite all this thing, like for example, last year you had 794 students and 957, right? So now if you compare here also, you're dealing with 106 students as a higher intake, but the number of students who got placed actually fell by 38 students. It actually fell, 794 minus 756. So your number of students increased, but the students who actually got placed fell. And when you see this, there seems to be a problem. And not just that, when you look at the median salary also, despite the fall in the number of students who were placed, the median salary also fell by about 8%. So across the level, there seems to be a big red flag as far as NIT Surathkal is concerned. I'm not for one moment suggesting that NIT Surathkal is good or bad or anything. I'm not here to sit in judgment. I want you to understand data of the kind of trend that NIT Surathkal seems to be having at this point in time in terms of how the number of students admitted is increasing, but the number of students is being placed and the absolute number itself is falling. I'm not even talking of percentages and those kind of things. And the median salary also seems to be following. This is something that you need to understand when you deal with data. Now moving ahead, having said that, I just need to complete everything of how it all works out. So we actually had, this from the Institute brochure is what we've taken this data for 24-25. So earlier I talked of 22-24. Here, this is the latest information which is in the Institute brochure. So this of course is the latest in a certain sense. Here when you look at it, for the BTech AI, it's 64 lakhs was the highest salary and 25.44 is the average salary. For IT, the average salary was 23.24 lakhs. These two they've declared. Now, typically, I keep saying this, it's very easy for institutions to declare what is the highest salary and average salary. I dare them to declare the minimum salary, they would not do that. Right? And that is a problem I have. I just want them to be a bit more transparent. If you have the courage of conviction to talk about your highest salary, you must also have the courage of conviction to talk of your lowest salary. Otherwise, just talk of your average salary and leave it there. So that is my take on this whole thing. But anyways, that's my take, personal take, and I'll move on. Now, what is the kind of cutoff that you need? And we are only talking of outside the home state. Remember, we're talking of JEE Main rank, outside home state, 2025. So it was last year's data is what we're talking about. You remember the placement data I showed is 1 year older. The marketing brochure data I showed it of last year. And this one also I'm showing it of last year of what is the cutoff that you need to get into NIT Surathkal and what branch will you get if you are to based on the JEE Main score. And this, remember, is a category rank. So when I'm talking of EWS, I'm talking of EWS category rank and not all rank. Similarly for OBC NCL, I'm talking of OBC NCL category rank and so on and so forth. When I talk of that, in BTech Computer Science, you need to have 1827 as a closing cutoff rank to be a part of NIT Surathkal. For AI, it is 2650. For BTech Information Technology, it's 3160. For BTech Computational and Data Science, it's 3471. And for Electronics and Communication, it's Engineering, it's 4347. One caveat I'll put it here, I only consider male because whenever we talk of girls, there is an extra numeracy seat and because of which the normalization of the rank goes for a toss. So I'm showing only the male and with no disability. If you want all this data of at a extra numeracy level also and PWD candidate also, please download the ebook. It will have all the data also. Right. For EWS students, 316 is a closing rank for CS. For AI, it is 318. So it is much closer here. Information technology, it's 404. Computational and data science, it's 415. And electronics and communications, 669. For OBC, 577 for CS. AI, 1017. Information technology 1198, computational and data science is 1452, and electronics and communication engineering 1795. Again for SC 364 for CS and 138 for ST. For AI it is 684 for ST and 180 for ST. For IT 571 for SC and 292 for ST. For computational and data science 726 for SC and 267 for ST. And BTech ECE 888 for SC and 459 for ST. So this again I'm repeating, JEE Main category rank outside the home state. Home state we're not talking. For you to get the details of the home state, again go look at the comprehensive guide that we created. It will have all that data. Moving further, the other branches, they also have triple E, right, where the closing rank is 6872 for open, mechanical 11950 for open, BTech chemical engineering 13477 for open, civil engineering 22901 for open, and metallurgical and materials engineering 22965, and mining engineering 28750. So you actually have that as general category. For the other categories, please take a screenshot of this. You will exactly know that. Or the best thing again I keep saying is download the ebook. It will have all this data. But take this because this is very important for you to understand at a category level what rank will get you which branch at NIT Surathkal or NIT Karnataka. Now, what are the companies that are coming for placement? You actually have the best of the companies coming for placement because remember it's a 60-year-old legacy. So most of these people would be working in every big company in the country and the world, right? So Google comes for placement, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Meta, Adobe, Apple, Oracle, Uber, Bloomberg, Samsung, Atlassian, IBM, Swiggy, Salesforce. So you actually have all kinds of companies. NVIDIA also comes for placement, right? Intel, Texas Instruments, Larsen & Toubro, which is manufacturing, Tata Steel manufacturing, Tata Motors automotive, Ashok Leyland automotive, Bosch, Goldman Sachs Investment Bank, Morgan Stanley Investment Bank, Deloitte Consulting, PwC Consulting, McKinsey Consulting, ISRO also comes here for placement. So you actually have the best institutions that are coming for placement for NIT Surathkal. This typically happens when you have a great legacy and you have your alumni spread all over the world. Now, when we looked at the data on LinkedIn to understand how are the students who studied at NIT Surathkal, how are they performing, we found 38,394 students who studied it or claimed that they studied at NIT Karnataka or NIT Surathkal, of which at this point in time, 319 students are right now working in Microsoft. Remember, I talked of the powerful alumni network? That's what it is. In Deloitte, 178 are right now working. EY, 72 are right now working. Qualcomm, 172 are right now working. Right? Now, over a period of time, when you look at it, 809 students at some point in time worked at Microsoft who studied at NIT Surathkal, right? Deloitte 508, EY 235, and Qualcomm 341. So that's the kind of range and the way the students are performing that they're able to work in these kind of companies. But it's not just this, we also looked at the Mang companies, which is the trillion-dollar companies that you have in the world. And remember, all these companies also go for placement in NIT Surathkal. So the proof of the pudding is whether they are actually working in those companies. So when we looked at the LinkedIn profile of students of NIT Surathkal, we found 93 students right now working at Meta. At some point in time, 157 students were working. Right. In Apple, 43 students are working. In Amazon, 339 students are working. In NVIDIA, 140 students are working. And in Google, 291 students are working. So very clearly, it is very, very clearly proven through the numbers that are there that the data that's been showing on the brochure also seems to be correct as far as the companies that are coming for placement is concerned. We also looked at how the students are globally mobile. And when we look at that data, 78% of the students are right now working in India, which also means that 22% of the students are working world over. Right. Now, this is a very, very good report card in that sense, right? And that comes from the legacy. The only question mark that I have is the latest data seems to be raising a lot of red flags, maybe in some other branches, not CS and all, but this seems to be the case. Of this 22%, 13% are in USA, right? About 2% are in UK. Right, another 1.5-2% is in Canada, Germany, you have it. But more importantly, of course, because 50% of the students come from Karnataka, 43% students are working in Karnataka. Of course, Bangalore being the software capital of the country, this is natural. But this 22% working all over the world is a very good report card for any institution, and that typically happens when the institution has been there for a long time. You know, people join a company, they keep growing up the ladder and they keep moving up the ladder, which seems to have happened here. And as you move up the ladder, you also occupy global positions beyond India, and this seems to have happened for most of the students who've studied at NITs. At least 22% of the students are working outside of India, which is a very good report card. I'll keep doing these kind of stories as I move along. If you want me to cover any engineering college of your choice, please message me in the message box here, and I'll be happy to cover that. And please subscribe to BTech 360 if you've not already done that. Thank you so much. Namaste.